He is in prayer. Okay, this is being, let me say, okay. He's in prayer, and he has, as we read in the last chapter, Brahma had an opportunity to see the personality of Godhead. He saw Garbhodaksha Vishnu, and he was a little bit confused because in the beginning of the creation of, well, before he's creating, he's not understanding what to do, as most cases. Sometimes when we come to Krishna consciousness, we don't know what to do. We're like confused. What do we do? And then someone has to come and say, well, this is what you can do. These are the services you can offer. And in this way, we get engaged. So Brahma was kind of in that space where he had no idea. He had no clue. He didn't know what his purpose was. And so the Lord appeared to him. And that's just the most amazing and beautiful thing, that it's explained actually in the last chapter what he saw, what Krishna looked like. And those of you that have been following these classes, you've heard the beautiful form of Garbhodaksha Vishnu, and how Lord Brahma, he was kind of a little bit overwhelmed by seeing the form. At the same time, he was so very happy. Just like some of us, when we first get to see the deities of the Lord, even here in even in our conditioned state, when we get an opportunity to first see the deities, many of us, most of us, I'm sure, had some kind of reaction, to seeing the deities, because for many of us, we never saw any form like that before, especially if you get to see forms like Radha Govinda all over the world. Radha Govinda has a special look. There's just something about Radha Govinda, that form of the deities. Anyway, so just to kind of help us to understand just a little bit of how Brahma saw Krishna personally, we get to see the Archavirgafa form of the Lord every day. And that when we see that form, it awakens something within us. So definitely Lord Brahma, when he saw that form of the Lord, he was awakened. However, he still didn't understand what he was supposed to do. But he knew that, in that state of not understanding, he went into what is explained in the Bhagavatam as meditation. He went into meditation, right, to try to understand. And the Lord revealed within his heart what he was supposed to do, what was supposed to happen. But here we're learning that Brahma prayed. He prayed for this creative energy to understand um, what his purpose was. And so, in the same way, oftentimes we find ourselves in prayer, trying to understand our purpose at different times in Krishna consciousness. We may have different purposes in this human form in terms of the services that we offer. And so just imagine the original created being, he is in prayer here. This is what we're reading in this canto, in this ninth chapter, that Brahma is in prayer, and he's specifically praying for the creative energy to do what he's supposed to do. And so all of the great devotees that have been in prayer, that go into prayer, there's a certain way to pray. And so Brahma is teaching us, right? As always, these great personalities, they're always showing us, teaching us what to do and how to do it. And so here he is. He's wanting to really engage, and so he has this mood of humility. That's one of the first lessons of engaging in vandana, in prayer. One has to have a humble state of mind, a humble consciousness, in order to approach the supreme. And so Brahma has this mood. He's very humble, and he's asking the Lord, like, he's actually in his heart, he's praying, and the Lord is revealing within his heart what he's supposed to do. Just like in most of our situations as devotees, as trying to be devotees, aspiring to be devotees, We may pray to the Lord to try to understand, as we said earlier, what purpose, what are we supposed to do? And sometimes we get that answer through a representative of the Lord, or we may get that answer simply in our hearts by Paramatma, the Lord in our heart, who will reveal to us at different times in our lives, we know how to engage in different services. And sometimes we may be instructed by someone to do a service, but we may not know how to do it. And then the Lord, he gives remembrance and forgetfulness also. So he helps us as we're aspiring to be devotees to remember how to do certain activities. So here's Brahma. He's this great devotee. He's a devotee of the Lord. And he's getting this opportunity now to remember and to go and to be in prayer and to really share with the Lord what's going on in his heart. And so this is the prayer, this verse is the form which I seek is eternally freed from material contamination, eternally freed from material contamination. Now, this is a prayer that's spoken by many, many of those personalities that have some understanding about the Supreme Lord. There are many, as we read in the Bhagavatam, we can read about some of the prayers that were offered by some of the great personalities. For example, Lord Shiva is mentioned in this text, where it says, it's mentioned, Prabhupada mentions this in the purport. The three deities, Brahma, Vishnu, and Mahesh, these are the executive heads of the three modes of material nature. Yeah, okay, good. There it is. Good passion, goodness, and ignorance. They're all generated from Garbhodaksha Vishnu. And this is what Brahma is describing. Garbhodaksha Vishnu, and this is his prayer to Garbhodaksha Vishnu. So in terms of understanding this mood of Lord Brahma, it's important to look at some of those great personalities that's mentioned in this purport by Srila Prabhupada and how they prayed. For example, Lord Shiva, he prayed to the Lord, and he also says, "O chief demigod amongst the demigods, O all-pervading Lord, master of the universe, by your energy, you are transformed into creation. You are the root and efficient cause of everything. You are not material. Indeed, you are the super soul or supreme living force of everything. Therefore, you are Parameshwara, the supreme controller of all controllers." So this is explaining all the Vishnu forms, Lord Shiva, and acknowledging, Lord Shiva is acknowledging that the Lord is within everything. He's the origin of everything. And so this is the principle of this verse that we're reading today. The principle Brahma is teaching us is to always remember that Krishna is the source of everything. Everything comes from the Lord. All the expansions come from the Lord. And so Vishnu is not different from Krishna. We've learned that from the Bhagavad Gita. However, the Vishnu forms, they have different roles, and they are engaged in different ways. Even the three Vishnu forms are engaged in different ways. And so Lord Brahma specifically is praying to Garbhodaksha Vishnu, that form of the Lord. Lord Shiva is also praying to the Supreme Lord, and he's explaining to us, this is Lord Shiva. Many people worship Lord Shiva as God, and this is one of those verses that Lord Shiva is helping us to understand. No, I am not God. Just like Brahma, he's in that mood of being very submissive, and he's in that mood of humility, and he's, of course, we remember that he's explained to Narada Muni that he's not God, and he explained to him, no, I'm not God. I am not the supreme person. And so here in these verses, in these prayers, Brahma is teaching us who is the supreme person. And for him, the supreme person is this understanding that of Garbhodaksha Vishnu, who will give him the intelligence within his heart, because Brahma is uh, his whole body's intelligence. So he's going to receive the intelligence from the Lord. So everything is emanation from the Lord. All of the expansions are coming from the Lord. Everything comes from the Lord. And so that basic principle, we must understand that basic principle. And that basic principle can only be understood by accepting the Vedas as the absolute truth. If we don't accept the Vedas as the absolute, then it would not be so easy to really understand how the Lord expands in so many ways. Even we are expansions in so many ways. However, to deeply understand this in the heart, firstly, it requires humility. Secondly, it requires that attitude of how to approach the Lord. And thirdly, it requires an understanding of who we are in relationship to the Lord. And so here in these prayers, the prayers of Lord Shiva, he's sharing, yet he is also not the personality of Godhead. So therefore, those persons that worship Lord Shiva as God, they're not absolutely understanding the conclusion of the Vedic scriptures. And this is why there's Srila Prabhupada has so much emphasis on demigod worship, to understand the difference about demigod worship. Prabhupada emphasizes quite a lot about impersonalism, because as we all know, at one time, those persons that were sharing truths about the Supreme Lord, or they were sharing spiritual knowledge about the Supreme Lord, they were sharing from an impersonalistic point of view. I mean, we read about Shankaracharya and we hear impersonalism, yet we understand Shankaracharya himself had understanding about the personality of Godhead. So Prabhupada, in his pranams, this is one of the reasons he came, is to help us to not be so mesmerized by personalism. And another area that Prabhupada spent a lot of time, Srila Prabhupada, in helping us, is to also understand about the demigods, and that the demigods are not the Supreme Lord. And here, Brahma is emphasizing that fact. He's in the purport, Prabhupada helps us to understand that all of these are generated from Garbhodakshayi Vishnu. This is Brahma sharing this. He's educating us. He's sharing with us, look, when we start wanting to understand God, then it's not so simple, to understand God. Firstly, it has to come from within the heart. The Lord has to give us that mercy to be able to understand him. It doesn't come from our own endeavors, as we heard in the previous chapter, where Brahma is personally endeavoring to learn, to know what his purpose is and to know why he's there. And he couldn't get any answers. He couldn't figure it out. So that's why now he's engaging in prayer. That's why we're in this part of the Bhagavatam, where Lord Brahma, he's what that word, supplicating himself. He's bowing down and trying to understand and begging for understanding, begging for some kind of instructions to help him. And the Lord is reciprocating with him. And so, yes, going back to these great devotees, this principle of prayer, this vandana, is exhibited by all of these great devotees, Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva. We know that their devotees, some devotees, their lives have been perfected by prayer. For example, Akura, he became a perfected being simply by the prayers that he offered to the Supreme Lord. And they all basically kind of give us the same understanding, or the same instruction for us to always remember that Krishna is the cause of all causes. That is important. Otherwise, our minds can become distracted into all of the different expansions of the Lord. And we may somehow, with scattered minds, think that, oh, this personality is God or that personality is God. And this is why these texts, these texts, or these volumes of Srimad Bhagavatam, volume 1, 2, and 3, are so important, because these volumes help us to understand who is the Lord. And so Akura, in his prayers, again, the same principle comes out. He says, I bow down to you, the cause of all causes, the original and inexhaustible supreme person, Narayan. From the world of the lotus, born from your navel, Brahma appeared, and by his agency, this universe has come into being. So Akura, he understood this principle. And again, these prayers with these principles are there for us, for our benefit. So Akura explains um, earth, water, fire, air, and ether, uh, false ego, the Mahatattva, the total material nature, and her source, the Supreme Lord's, all the different expansions, the mind, the senses, the sense objects, the senses, the presiding deities of the senses, all these causes of the cosmic manifestation are born from your transcendental body. And the personified Vedas, they also pray. And again, why am I bringing up so much about these prayers? It's how these great persons understood who the Lord was. They had no doubts. They had no confusion in their minds about the personality of Godhead. And Srila Prabhupada has spent his entire life helping us to understand this basic, simple, and for the simple, a fact about the Supreme Lord, that Krishna, he is the supreme cause of all causes, and Krishna then expands into hundreds and hundreds. Vishnu expands hundreds of Vishnus. So, but the original form, the original Krishna, is the supreme personality of Godhead, and all the Vishnu forms are also expansions of the Lord. So the personified Vedas, they also prayed, oh, unconquerable Lord, unconquerable Lord, you engage your illusory energy, composed of the three modes, to unleash, maintain, and devastate the inconceivable manifest cosmos, all within your own self. As the superintendent, as the supreme superintendent of Maya. I love that. The personified Vedas, they're like, you are the supreme superintendent of Maya. You appear to be situated in the interaction of material nature. It seems like that. However, when we study, we understand, no, yes, Krishna, he expands in order to assist the pure devotees and also assist those devotees that are aspiring to remember that they are pure devotees. You appear to be situated in the interaction of the modes of nature. However, you are never affected by material activities. In fact, you are directly engaged in your own eternal spiritual bliss, and you cannot be accused of any material infection. So this was basically the prayer of Lord Brahma when he's sharing here in this purport. Which I see is eternally freed from material contamination, the translation. So even if our minds cannot understand this, then simply by hearing from those personalities that have experience, then we can accept those personalities, because we may not be able to understand. However, there are persons that do understand. And that's another very important factor in transcendental knowledge, that Krishna always makes himself available for us to understand him in so many different ways. And so I remember recently having a conversation with a Christian person. And this Christian person was sharing with me the difference in their theology about belief and faith, belief and faith. And so she was explaining to me that belief as far as their Christian theology and how that is practicalized in their life as Christians is that belief means you have some awareness about that God is supreme and you believe that God will interact in their lives in such a way that God will make things auspicious. And even Christians understand, even when things appear not to be auspicious, it's still auspicious if they really understand, the Lord, or if they understand the Lord's representative, Jesus. They do accept that okay, it's even things that are not auspicious are still auspicious. They have that belief that God is there and God will interact in their lives. They really do have that belief system. However, she was sharing with me that yes, they have that belief system, but for them, it's different than faith. And she was sharing that faith in their tradition means action. It means doing something. It means, yes, you have that belief system may be there. However, in order to make it like proactive, in order to make it really relevant in a person's life, there needs to be some action. And I was thinking, that's very interesting. That's Krishna consciousness, because in Krishna consciousness, we may have the belief that Brahma is the supreme being. We may have the belief that yes, there are the three Vishnus and they have different activities that they perform, and ultimately everything is coming from the Lord, the Supreme Lord. We may have that belief. However, in order for that belief to be active in our lives, there has to be some action. And that's what Lord Brahma is teaching us, how to engage in that action. Because in that stillness of performing tapasya, he was able to get that understanding. The Lord was able to reveal to him in his heart, okay, this is your purpose in life, and this is what you're supposed to do, and this is how you do it, right? And so in the same way, we as devotees of the Lord, we may have a little bit of an understanding of who these personalities are, um, more directly than perhaps some Christians. Some may not understand the different Vishnu forms of the Lord. They may not understand absolutely Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, in terms of the theology of it. They may have some understanding in terms of the essence of it. And so for us, though, the principle remains the same. There has to be some action. And so therefore, Lord Brahma, he is acting in two ways. He's acting through revelation of what his purpose is, and also practicalizing that revelation by first offering prayers, offering glorification, being humble in order to let the Lord know I am accepting this purpose for my life. I'm accepting the service that I'm being offered in my life. And so this principle again, one must know the Lord and know that everything has come from him. And this is one thing that Brahma is sharing in this purport. Krishna, I know who Krishna is. I know. In this case, he's speaking, as we said, about Garbhadaksha Vishnu. I know who Garbhadaksha, I know my Lord. I've seen my Lord. I see how beautiful my Lord is. And I want to act. I want to perform some action in order to be aligned with what my Lord wants. And so in this mood, we see that Prabhupada goes on in this purport to explain to us that the different Vishnu forms. So he's explaining from Dishiradaksha Vishnu, many Vishnus, incarnation expands. And we hear that from these other great devotees. We may not absolutely, perhaps, fully be how can I say, we may not fully, it may just be in the intellect that we get some understanding that, okay, these different Vishnu forms, they do these different activities, and that, there's so many different forms, different Vishnu forms that are there. Well, there's three Vishnu forms, but these different Vishnu forms, they expand also into so many different areas of how creation is manifested. And so Prabhupada says that these different Vishnu forms that they manifest in different ages and times, and that they're never to be compared to the conditioned souls. And so, why is that? Why? What is the reason? And yeah, when we're sharing Krishna consciousness to different people of different traditions, you know, it's really important to have this backdrop in our own arsenal of how, when we approach people, that we know we have at least some awareness and some acceptance of how the Lord manifests, and why is it that the Lord is different than the conditioned souls. And for us as devotees, that's kind of like ABC of Krishna consciousness, right? However, for many people in different that are trying to understand God, they may not have that understanding. So, firstly, Garbhodakshaya Vishnu, which is who we're speaking about, this is who revealed himself to Lord Brahma. The first thing for us to know is that the Lord is free from material contamination, and we verify that. How do we know that? We verify it by personalities who've had that experience of knowing this. And this is why Prabhupada has spoken to us in the Bhagavad Gita, why he's in the purport, why he explained to us what Krishna spoke to Arjuna in the verse Tadvidi Paripatena Paripashena Sevaya that we must have this submissive mood to be able to hear from the spiritual master. That's one of the key verses of how this knowledge unfolds in our hearts, is firstly, that mood of submission has to be there to be able to understand how the Lord is free from material contamination, how the Lord has nothing to do, with this material world. Thank you, Ishwara Prabhu. I mean, I'm looking at Ishwara, so I'm somehow thinking of Ishwara. I don't know. Ishwara, you're always in my heart. Thank you, Sahadev Prabhu. So this is such a beautiful verse. This verse says, by submissive inquiries, right? So that has to be there. We need to be able to inquire submissively, which is what Lord Brahma did. And so as we inquire submissively, as we have that basic principle in our awareness, firstly, I don't know anything. I'm just a conditioned soul in this material world. I want to learn. I need to understand. When we suffer enough, we come to that point where we're like, I need to know something more about who I am and why am I here and why am I suffering and why is this so miserable? When we get to that place, then the Lord in the heart reveals, right? And it reveals through some external source. In most cases, for many of us, maybe it's a book, maybe it's a devotee, maybe it's prashadam, whatever, Lord reveals. And then we get an opportunity to start learning. Oh, okay, I need to hear from those persons that have more knowledge than me or more understanding than me. And then the process begins. And then that process becomes very beautiful as that process expands in our practical lives and expands within our hearts. And so, firstly, is to understand who is Garbhodakshaya Vishnu, who is this person that Brahma is speaking to. And so, intellectually, we may be able to explain this. However, how do we get this understanding in the heart? That this Lord Brahma, this personality that creates everything, how he is submissively wanting to understand from the Lord, from Garbhodakshaya Vishnu. So the difference between the conditioned soul and Garbhodakshaya Vishnu, or Kshirodakshaya Vishnu, that Prabhupada mentions in the verse, is that the conditioned soul, we are subjected to what? Birth, old age, disease, and death, right? We are very much a part of Krishna's illusory energy, and we're very much conditioned by, our false ego, our minds, even our intellect sometimes can make us, can scatter our minds. Sometimes that can happen. And so it's important to understand our conditioned nature, firstly. And that comes from understanding the sources that are bigger than our conditioned nature, that are not a part of this conditioned nature. And that's, in this case, Brahma speaking about the Vishnu forms. And so this condition, so to understand who Krishna, who the Garbhadaksha Vishnu is, well, we hear Brahma describes him, but mostly Prabhupada keeps us he explains it very simply, and it says, the spiritual person is Satchidananda Vigraha, right? Eternality, knowledge, and bliss. And we are a part of that. We are that, actually, not in quantity. We are that in quality, the same as the Lord, but we've forgotten, right? Krishna tells Arjuna that I'm the source of your forgetfulness, your remembrance. So we've forgotten. And we're now in this process of remembering. And so in this remembrance, it's not as simple as in some traditions. Oh, I just remember God, and I give my life to God, and I just remember God. In bhakti, it's a little different in the sense that, yes, we want to remember God. However, we want to understand who God is, right? What does God do? Where does God live? What is his activities? And so when we learn from Brahma, the first created beings, we get to understand this. We get to understand what's a conditioned soul and who the Supreme Lord is. And so Prabhupada also mentions that in this purport, he mentions that the Lord, he comes, let me see if I see that, he comes for anyone who comes spares them. Okay, so yeah, he says that the incarnations of Vishnu who appear at different ages and times are never to be compared to the conditioned souls. Yeah, sometimes we have, this is why Prabhupada emphasized the impersonal philosophy so much for us to understand, because impersonalists, they always say, I'm God, you're God, we're all God, right? And that doesn't work really in understanding personalism, because in personalism, we know that the Supreme Lord has qualities for sure that I don't have as a conditioned soul. And so therefore, it's important for me to understand who I am as a conditioned soul, which is what oftentimes impersonalists do not understand, their position as conditioned souls. And then here again, Prabhupada is speaking about the, there was an important point I saw that he had mentioned about the devotees, that the Lord appears, for the pure devotees. In this world, the Lord appears like Brahma. He's a pure devotee of the Lord. He's a pure devotee, and the Lord appears to give personalities like Brahma. She of course Shiva is considered, anyway, Shiva, um, and uh, Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva. And so Vishnu, the Lord, appears in order to give those personalities different services to do in the material world. And similarly, those representatives of the Lord that are in the material world, the Lord facilitates them, right? The Lord facilitates, just like if we look at Srila Prabhupada, he's a pure devotee of the Lord. He appears in the material world, and he's absolutely fully facilitated by the Supreme Lord. I see Kusha's hand is up, so I'm gonna stop. Maybe I'm needing to connect with him. Kusha Prabhu.
Yes, Hare Krishna.
Yes. Okay.
I came to disturb you small.
No worries. I was wondering, I missed you over the last few months. Where you been?
I was in
Where
my
where
I
you
was in
been?
my Vagunta.
Oh, okay. You're one
I
of those
have
persons who
a
created your
question.
Vakunta.
This verse,
Okay.
we see the story of the shoemaker, the cobbler, and the eroded Brahmana. When Radhamuni was going to Vaikuntha, they asked Krishna, when will I come back home? And the Brahmana doesn't have faith because he has so much knowledge. We also
Mhm.
see the story about the gopis of Vrindavan, who were common maid servants. They don't know the scripture, they only know Krishna. So my question is, these incarnations of Krishna, they are highly detailed and highly philosophical. Does one need to know these detailed incarnations to go back to Godhead?
That's a beautiful question. And there are many senior devotees that have a lot of intellectual understanding of this point you're asking, Kusha Prabhu. However, in my simplicity, I will do my best to, from what I've understood. No, we don't have to have all this understanding about all of these different incarnations to go back to Godhead. Because remember, the person that was blind and was reading the Srimad Bhagavatam upside down or something like that, you know, he was really a pure devotee. He didn't, he was blind, right? So ultimately, no. However, Prabhupada created teachers, you know, and Prabhupada's mood was I saw this just a few days ago, is to spiritualize the entire world, which is create a spiritual revolution. So Prabhupada wanted that everyone on this planet would somehow get a seed planted of devotional life, right? And in order to do that, one of the reasons why it's important to understand these different incarnations of the Lord is because there is a large sector of people in the world that are labeling themselves as scientists. And scientists, um, how do you say, their whole lives are based on defeating anything about the supremacy of the Lord, right? Everything that they do. I have this conversations with my son often. He's a scientist, and it's the hardest thing for him to understand about the supreme personality of Godhead and how things work. And so it's important for us to at least have some awareness of that. I was listening to a class of His Holiness Bhakti Charu Maharaj, and he was explaining this verse from a scientific point of view. And he was sharing how, the scientists, they try to prove that, which he shares is very nonsensical, that life comes from life, right? That life comes from just matter. And he was saying that that's so nonsensical because how can anything comes from matter? Matter is dead. And so we have to have consciousness, right? And so therefore the consciousness has to be there in the matter for life in something that's dead. So the scientists oftentimes they have bits and pieces, not that they totally don't understand, but they have bits and pieces of how things work. Just like recently my son he's studying some, I don't know, they move from one thing to another. But there's a theology, maybe not a theology, but some kind of explanation about science. And anyway, so the science that he was explaining to me was something to do with all these little bubbles, right? These bubbles in the universe. And so Ekivera Pupu, which, sometimes he can hear more from Ekivera than me because I'm mom. So Ekivera Pupu showed him just the picture, of the different universes coming from Lord Mahavishnu. And he was stunned. He was like, what? He was so shocked that there it is, like, and then so he wrote to me and he said, can you please tell him to send me that information? Because he's a scientist. He needs data. He needs to, So this is the reason why we take the time to understand. I don't understand, and it really do come from the humility of a person to understand anything about these types of um, detailed expansion of the Lord. It takes a lot of humility, and it takes being able to have a desire to share it with other people when that time comes. Like with scientists, it's important to know this. So I'm going to then ask a couple of other people because I see like, okay, that brought up a question. So maybe this is a time to bring up a question. There's a lot in this verse, a lot. Understanding the Vishnu forms, understanding our conditioned nature, understanding how Krishna is different from who we are as conditioned souls, um, understanding Vishnu as a spiritual person that's not affected by anything material. It's just so much in the verse. So I'm gonna ask though. I'm gonna stop there and ask, Ishvara, what do you have to say about Kusha's question, Prabhu? Ishvara is transcendentally situated in Vrindavan.
It's always nice to see you. It's been it's been ages, I guess.
Krishna willing, we'll see you this year. We're coming in October.
To Vrindavan?
That's right.
Oh, great. That'd
Yep.
be great. That'd be wonderful.
Krishna willing.
Well, that'd be good. So a few things.
Older, Baba. Baba, you're getting older.
I still can't believe myself that the Buddha is becoming older. Just to a few points, in terms of what Kusha asking about I kind of forgot the question though. But the main thing is like different understanding of God, of the Lord Krishna, the Lord, is that the Lord is it's because we know that devotees do not have the same understanding. So the Lord is actually will enable us to know about Him only for as much as we're able, which means for as much as what is allow us to know about Him, that is that much we will know.
Yeah.
So as much as it allow us to know about Him, after all, Krishna is unlimited. So how can we know? And we are limited. So how can we know what is unlimited? But He's able to, I guess, based on our own surrender to Him, our own relationship. So it will allow us to know Him only to as much as we, based on His own supreme independence, on His own supreme will. So that's why sometimes when you see two different devotees, they will speak differently, even though they may speak on the same topic, but they never speak the same thing. Because that understanding, that's what the Lord has given them. Just like one time Srila Prabhupada was speaking with his godbrother, Sridhar Maharaj. He was speaking with his godbrother, and they are specifically talking about this verse, how Krishna says that even though a devotee may commit the sinful, even though a devotee may commit the most sinful activity, but you see, it should still be considered saintly. Such devotees should still consider saintly, even though they may commit the most sinful activities. And those who have that understanding that, yes, even though a devotee may commit the most sinful activities, he should still be considered saintly. The person who has such an understanding, such a person himself is dharmic. He himself is considered a religious person. So Srila Maria had written a particular commentary on this verse. And then he asked Srila Prabhupada that, what do you think of this? What do you think of this commentary? And Srila Prabhupada explained and replied that, well, who can say it better than you? So basically, Prabhupada glorifies God, brother, for giving that particular comment. Yes, even the Prophet himself, he has also given some extensive comments on the same verse. So our particular understanding will always be different, because we all have particular relationship with the Lord, and then based on that relationship, what we're able to know, then what the Lord will enable us to understand what He wants us to know. The gopis of Vrindavan, they are not interested in knowledge and anything like that. But at the same time, when the person like Uddhava came to Vrindavan, and Uddhava is a big jnani, is a disciple of Brihaspati, very knowledgeable person. But when he came to Vrindavan, he tried to preach to Bijabasi that they should not think of Krishna, they should stop lamenting for Krishna. So they simply told Uddhava that, look, your knowledge here is useless. Your knowledge, whatever knowledge you have, is not applicable, because you don't know who is Krishna. We know who Krishna is. So Uddhava, with his big knowledge, he found himself defeated when he came to Vrindavan, because love is the highest criteria. And it's that love, the love of the gopis, that's actually why Krishna actually sent Uddhava to Vrindavan, to go and learn about the love which the gopis have for him. So, and another thing we're talking about, belief and faith. So belief can change, but faith is what actually is what delivers our heart system. So the faith is more profound than the belief itself. So it's good that you've talked much about that belief and the faith system. You can believe in something, but what we have faith on, that's actually what sustains us.
You know, Ishwar Prabhu, as you were speaking, I see Madhavan Prabhu has his hand up. However, I was thinking, in order to really enter into that love, into that praying of being in a relationship with Krishna, in terms of sadhana bhakti, it's important for us anyway, in terms of the purification that we need to enter into that loving relationship, to get some awareness or some understanding of these Vishnu expansions. I think that was Kusha's question, is why do we need to even understand anything about the Vishnu expansions? And yeah, so that's my understanding, to enter into the divine love, to get that mercy to enter into divine love. It's nice to know how that mercy works, who it's coming from and how it comes down.
Yeah, that becomes automatically, because once you know Krishna, then automatically you know everything. You know, because when Mother Yashoda, when she looked into the mouth of Krishna, because Krishna was accused of eating the dirt in Vrindavan, his friend, they came to complain to Mother Yashoda that Krishna is eating dirt. So Mother Yashoda asked Krishna, have you eaten dirt? Krishna said, no. And Mother Yashoda, okay, open your mouth. So when Krishna opened his mouth, when she looked inside Krishna's mouth, she saw all the universes. She saw all the different Vishnu expansions. Mahavishnu, Garbhodesha Vishnu, all the demigods. She saw everything within the mouth of Krishna. And Krishna is her son. And then she saw. So temporarily she said, what am I saying? So what am I saying? But at the same time, Krishna did not allow her love to diminish, even though she was able to seek all the Krishna's manifestations and all that. But Krishna did not allow the love which she has for Krishna. That's always supersede everything. So that's always the stand foremost.
Yeah.
So I have a comment on what you said. Can I ask you?
Yeah, go ahead.
You said once you know Krishna, you know everything.
Yeah.
In what aspects? Because most devotees, we know Krishna, we don't know management. So how do we say we know everything when we know Krishna?
No, but if you actually know Krishna, then you know everything.
But we don't know management. That's my question.
Yasmi Vigyante, Sava Eva Vigyantam Bhavati. By known form, everything becomes known. This is the scriptural citation.
Yes, philosophically is correct. But my question is, we know Krishna, we know everything,
But how
but
can you
we
say that
don't
you
know
know?
management.
How can you say that you know Krishna?
So yes, I think
I
that's
know
the
Krishna.
question.
So how can you say you know Krishna?
So Brahma, so here we see Brahma is going to be the most important manager in one sense. He's going to create, he's going to do a service that requires a lot of, attention to do that service. And he's giving us the example of why we need to know this aspect of Krishna, which is Garbhodakshay Vishnu. It's not even talking about Krishna in terms of his form in Goloka Vrindavan. He's talking about the Vaikunthas, why we need to understand even the Vaikunthas. And so this is Lord Brahma giving us that example. And he's one of the greatest managers. So in order to understand Krishna, it's just beautiful. Just like if I want to understand you, Kusha, my understanding of you may be different than somebody like, that has another, like Sahadev, right? We understand each other differently. But I might want to understand you like Sahadev does. And in order for that to happen, I need to get some information. I need to
Perform
learn.
austerity or tapasya.
That's right. Exactly. We're going to have to perform tapasya. I'm going to have to perform some tapasya. And I have that desire, Kusha, to know you like Sahadev does. So I'm going to have a lot of work to do.
Thank you.
Haribo. Madhuvan Prabhu.
So through chanting, everything becomes. By chanting Krishna's name with faith, everything becomes.
Ishvara Prabhu, that's such a absolute principle. However, oftentimes devotees are in their human condition. And so to that gap sometimes to understand that absolute principle may need different way. Maybe there's different things they may have to understand before they can really grasp that principle that is so important. It's such a foundational principle to our bhakti theology. At the same time, in our human unfoldment, as you said, Ishvara, earlier, different people might hear things differently. So in our human unfoldment, there's so many times I've seen devotees jump from this human unfolding to being this pure devotee, which we are pure devotees. And then, but however, in the gap of that human person that we are, in that gap, they often create so much pain for themselves and for others. I was just listening to a person last night as I was trying to prepare for this verse. And that person, I can hear that they have theological I don't know if it's understanding, because understanding means you act in a certain way, but they have I want to say intellectual understanding of the scriptures that really captures my attention. However, that person's behavior has created so much pain for so many people, and I just was so conflicted because I wanted to hear from this person. And then my mind and my intellect kept saying, however, I know the behavior of what this person did and how painful it was for so many people. And for that person themselves, ultimately. And so that gap of devotees saying one thing and doing something else, it's really, like, I think, disastrous. Very disastrous.
So my Prabhu call it, there's pracha and there's achara. Pracha means speaking ability to preach. And achara means behavior. So pracha and achara must be together. Otherwise, there's disturbance. So pracha and achara. So when my Prabhu was talking to her, I said that your behavior is very ideal. And then you also the preacher. So when one is able to both together, then that is person called acharya.
Yes.
If we can speak nicely, like I can speak nicely, but I cannot behave properly. So which means what is the value of such understanding if one's behavior is not in accordance with what one is preaching? It's just
Yeah.
it just basically become like a disturbance, basically.
Yes, absolute disturbance. Absolute. I saw Madhuvan Prabhu. Haribol. Thank you, Ishvara Prabhu. See you soon. Krishna is willing.
That'd be great.
Madhuvan.
Madhavan, Prabhu, you are muted. Okay, good.
Okay. Hare Krishna, Mother. All glory comes to our feet. Nice to your beautiful face again. It's a pleasure to have you on this platform today.
Thank you.
What I just want to say, Prabhu Peter, if I heard him well properly, he mentioned about the cobbler and the brahmana when they were asking Narada when they are going to come back home. I think that aspect is only trying to differentiate between the jnanis and the devotees. I think you mentioned something like that. One can have too much knowledge, but at the same time, it might not have that. Engaging in devotional service is like a shorter way to self-realization. But those who are jnanis, it will take them several lifetimes, as was explained in Gita, 4:13, that it takes them several lifetimes before they will come to the conclusion that Krishna is all that is, and the surrender of him as perfect. So it's very rare. Just my comment about that. But my question is,
Madhuvan Prabhu, I just want to, 1 minute. I want to ask Sahadev to just summarize what you just said, because I couldn't hear totally. So Saha, you usually can hear more than that.
Yeah,
I couldn't properly hear him.
Yeah, Madhavan Prabhu was expressing what Krishna Prabhu was saying about the cobbler and the brahmana.
Okay.
So he is also simply affirming to what both your humble self and Ishvara Prabhu said, that devotional service is most important. It's like the shortest way of knowing Krishna. Like those who study the scriptures, they are journeys, and oftentimes it takes them many lifetimes to realize Krishna, to go back to Krishna. Then that's what
Okay. Okay. Thank you so much. Yeah, for me, I'm not. I don't know if it's the whatever the thing, the cloud. I'm not hearing you. Maybe the cloud is different for Saha. So Madhuvan Prabhu, you please continue.
No, you are muted.
My question now, because during your lecture, you said Vishnu and Krishna is the same. But what happened when Krishna was performing his pastimes in Vrindavan 5,000 years ago with his cowhead boys, and Lord Brahma could not recognize him as the Supreme Personality of Godhead? So is that difference between Krishna himself and the Vishnu, or I just want some little explanation about it.
Yeah, I heard that part. I heard that one. So in the pastime of Lord Brahma, that Brahma Mohan Leela, from what my understanding, that's a pastime with Krishna in Goloka Vrindavan. This pastime is Lord Brahma in terms of creation with Garbhodaksha Vishnu, which is an expansion of Krishna in Goloka Vrindavan. If I remember correctly, Vishnu has, I can't remember what percentage of Krishna, it's Krishna, but they're in a different role. How much, what is it? So Karnadaksha Vishnu, his role is different from Garbhadaksha Vishnu. Garbhadaksha Vishnu's role is different from Kishiradaksha Vishnu. However, they're all Vishnu forms of the Lord. They're all part of who the Lord is. They're all a part of Krishna. Nothing, that's what Ishwara Prabhu was saying, nothing can be separate from the Lord. This is why it's important for us to understand, the tendency is we only want Madhurya Ras, right? Which is what's recommended. We only want Krishna and Goloka Vrindavan. We want to, hear about the gopis and Krishna. And that's our path. At the same time, though, Krishna is not different from his pastimes in Vaikuntha. I mean, in one sense, it's different. That's what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says. Achintya Beda Beda Tattva. That's why he gave us this this theme, that it's simultaneously one and different. Simultaneously one, that it's all Krishna, and it's different because they're performing different roles. They're doing different things. Just like Prabhupada gives the example of I think, if I remember correctly, that example of what is it, the high court judge, and he comes home, and when he comes home, his children deal with him differently than maybe they deal with him when he's at the court. Or I hope I'm not mixing up that example, but I remember, that there is a difference. At the same time, nothing can be separate from Krishna. Everything. We are a part of Krishna. We're not separate from Krishna in one sense. We are in quantity. And in our conditioned state, definitely we're in Krishna's illusory energy, but that's still Krishna. Krishna is everything. Everything comes from the Lord. And how we understand all of these different expansions of the Lord, that comes from humility and purification, that realization. And that's why we have all these personalities, as we said earlier, that in their prayers, like Lord Shiva, like Brahma, like us, the personified Vedas, in their prayers, they are confirming what Lord Brahma has said. And that's for our benefit, because the tendency is our minds are very scattered and doubtful, and which is why we need to hear from other sources that are connected, aligned with the Supreme Lord. That's my understanding, Madhavan Prabhu. If anyone else, there are so many senior devotees here that I love personally to hear from myself.
Well, Hare Krishna, Mother VRAJALILA. I would like to share something on the screen from Srila Prabhupada, which affirms what both yourself and Ishwara Prabhu shared in response to Krishna Prabhu's question. So this is Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 7, text number 3. And in the purport, Srila Prabhupada states this. You may read it, Mother.
Yeah, sure. The word Atmagatim is significant in the sense of perfect knowledge of the Supreme. One should not be satisfied simply by knowing the qualitative equality of the Lord and the living being. One should know the Lord as much as can be known by our limited knowledge. It is impossible for the Lord to be known perfectly as he is, even by such liberated persons as Shiva or Brahma. So what to speak of other demigods or men in this world? Still, by following the principles of the great devotees and the instructions available in the scriptures, one can know to a considerable extent the features of the Lord. Thank you. Hari Hari. God. Thank you, Sahab. Yeah, so who really can understand the Lord? But one thing that's a blessing for all of us is we have these great devotees that at least we can hear from them about their understanding. So that's a blessing. And the qualification is that they need to be free from material desires to be able to hear from, for them to properly represent the Supreme Lord. So is there anyone else that would like to share any points on these, this beautiful verse? What is
Yes, it's me. I have one more controversial question.
Okay, Kusha. I love that you're here. Just that you're here is mercy for all of us.
You mentioned that we know this, that one is not different from the Lord. At least the Paramatma is in the body. But when we commit sin, we suffer. The Lord in the body does not suffer the sin we commit. Like we put our hand in the fire, we get burnt. The Atma in the body does get burnt. So in this argument, how can a kami, or when we are preaching, how can somebody understand that he is not different from the Lord?
How can he understand that he's not different from the Lord? Well, we are different from the Lord, right? We're different in quantity, not in quality. We're also Satchidananda Vigraha, but we're conditioned by Krishna's illusory energy. And we are suffering from forgetfulness of the Lord. So in that sense, Krishna can never forget who he is, because Krishna is absolute. And as far as sin, you know, His Holiness Bhaktitirtha Swami, my revered spiritual master, he speaks a lot about sin. And he explains, you know, that with sin, one can be like given, let's say, like one can become free from sinful activities simply by begging for forgiveness, right? A person can actually become free. So again, here's the prayers, right? Like we also read in Bhagavatam, so many prayers that are offered to Krishna for things that so many personalities have done that were considered either sinful or maybe in some cases downright outright offensive. And so Bhaktitirtha Maharaj says sin, it's definitely a deterrent for loving God, but more than sin is offenses to the devotees, the holy names, the holy dance. And so he gives a beautiful example about understanding the difference between sin and offenses. And he explains that with a sin, you can beg for forgiveness. And, you know, if yeah, more than likely you'll get forgiven. More than likely we will get forgiven for the sins we commit if we come to that place where we beg the Lord for forgiveness. However, with this offenses, Bhaktitirtha Maharaj explains that it requires anugraha. Anugraha, he explains, is that the Lord will not forgive us for those offenses. We have to go to those persons that we offended and ask them, you know, to forgive us. And then that's only the first part. We ask them to forgive us, and then we do something. Here comes the word again, action. We do something in order to rectify whatever it is that however we may have offended that person. So for example, if I offend you, Kusha Prabhu, by, let's say, even the simplest form of offense, criticizing you for something. If I do that, if I offend you, and you take that as an offense. I mean, generally a devotee don't take offense, but let's just say you accept that as an offense.
Yes.
And let's say I come to you now, I say, well, please forgive me. And so, you know, or I pray to Krishna, Krishna, please forgive me for the offense that I caused from Kusha. And we have that example in our scriptures, right? Krishna will say, okay, you have to get that. You have to go to Kusha and beg for forgiveness, right? Krishna won't intervene. So now I come to you, Kusha, and I said, Prabhu, I'm so sorry. I said this thing, I did this thing, whatever it was. And then what the next step, so that's the first step. So Kusha might say, yeah, I forgive you. It's okay, no problem. But internally, Kusha might still be holding on to some resentment or some.
That is the problem.
Wait, okay, let me finish, Kusha. Yeah, you may still hold on to something that says, why is such a nonsense? Such a nonsense guy speaking like this or doing this or whatever, whatever. You may still think like that. So what I have to now do in order to help you to not think like that is I have to do something for you. So I have to come to you and say, Kusha, please forgive me. And Kusha, what can I do for you to remove this offense that I've committed for you? And you might say, well, I want a new car. Buy me a, 2025 car, whatever. I'm just using that as an example. I'm just trying to make this funny, but it's not really funny, right? So I then have to come to you and say, what can I do in order for you to truly forgive me, right? It's a whole process. So sin, we put a lot of emphasis on sins, but sins is not as dangerous as committing offenses to devotees. That's very, very dangerous for our spiritual life. So we got to be really careful.
Mother, please take a question from Sati. Then you come back to me, please.
Sati Devi, Haribol.
At your mute, okay. Yeah, good.
I was just commenting what he said is that I remember Gurudev said in Balasan class that I know that it says in the Sri Balasan, I don't remember where I can find it, that if the disciple is like misbehaving or acting sinfully, that the Gurudev will have bad dreams. It's in the Balasan. So I just always think that because he was saying that having like the super soul in the heart is not being affected, but in that sense that it's affected. Like I'm aware if I go out and eat at a restaurant, go to watch a movie, I always think in my head like, oh, my Gurudev is being affected by this. He's getting this. He's getting what I'm doing. So I just see that the connection, the direct connection there to what I'm doing is affecting my spiritual master.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think going to the movies is sinful. I think it's just gratifying our senses. So I think even with sins, we need to kind of distinguish what is a sin, what is really a sin, and there's the laws of Manu that explains what sins are. So I think we often have guilt from doing certain things that maybe our senses are dragging us to do, which are not conducive surely for spiritual growth. But Srila Prabhupada has given us, definitely 4 regulative principles. And if we break those are kind of considered as sinful. We can beg forgiveness for those things. Again, the emphasis, and I hear what you're saying, Sati, about dreams, because what happens when we kind of do things that our senses drag us to do that we know are not conducive to our spiritual life, it lives in our subtle bodies. And when we go to sleep at night, our subtle bodies become very awake. And what lives really in our subtle bodies is this guilt and this shame from what we've done. So we get harassed by guilt and shame in our subtle bodies when we go to sleep. And that's just, that happens. And so that's why it's important for us to be very thoughtful about all the things that is given to us in the Vedic scriptures that we learn in terms of practicalizing the scriptures in our lives. And I'm not saying this to say I have, my own, litany of things that I have to work, that I'm working, that I'm praying to Krishna about. However, this is the scriptures, right? And so, begging to, one of the main things is to criticize devotees. If we cannot do that, if you could try to not, I include myself, not do that for one day, just one day, just go without criticizing anyone. Start with a devotee. Start with not criticizing devotees. Just go for one day and see how's that possible. And check the thoughts. We might not speak it out, but just check the thoughts that comes in our minds about devotees. It's a really hard thing. It's a big tapasya. It's a big austerity. And it's an austerity in this age of Kali that is so important. And we don't always give the emphasis that's needed. We live in a society sometimes especially in our Krishna conscious communities where we're just offensive to each other. And we just think of it as, it's just like a normal thing, you know. But no, it's not. It's actually seen by the Lord. So we got to be careful. And I say this because I'm speaking to myself.
Yes, Mother, are you through?
Yes.
I have one last question. From what
Yes.
example you give with my name, if you beg me for forgiveness and I refuse to forgive you, am I not committing offense to you who came to beg for forgiveness? Because 2 days ago, Ganga Prasad gave a class. He said, for one to be a devotee, he must be empowered to be a devotee. So when a devotee begs for forgiveness and somebody superficially forgives, but internally he harbors hatred of many years in his heart, is that person not committing offense at your own lotus feet? Who offended him before?
Thank you,
Can help
Kucha.
also.
You know, there's different levels of devotees, right? So there's a Kanishta devotee, and that devotee may hold on to resentments because they're in the process of growing in their bhakti. And as they become more of a Madhyam devotee, then they move from one level of purification to another, which is as a Madhyam, they may, they wouldn't hold on to the offense, right? A Madhyam would maybe still a little bit hold on because it's really the Uttama devotee that is free from, you know, taking on offenses or not accepting offenses. So it depends on where the devotee is at in their process of bhakti. And that's why this, you know, really studying is, understanding where we are, right? Where are we? So yes, devotees are empowered. I guess Ganga Prasad Prabhu meant that in a way of saying we can't do it on our own, which Lord Brahma taught us in the previous chapter, where he was trying to do it on his own, but he couldn't. He had to surrender. So we can't. So we get empowered by the spiritual master. We get empowered by other devotees. We get empowered by the Lord. Ultimately, everything is coming from the Lord. So the Lord acts within everyone. And so, yes, empowerment is so very important. However, when we talk about empowerment, that's a word that's used, you know, in our modern kind of language, which is wonderful. Yes, we must know that we can't do it on our own. At the same time, it's important to know where we are as a devotee. Are we a Kanishta that's praying to get empowered to become a Madhyam and acting in such a way that we are deserving of being a Madhyam? Are we a Madhyam that's praying to be a Uttama? There are many that we've seen that are in that category, that, you know, they're doing everything that they can, and it's only through the mercy of the Lord or grace of the Lord that they will become like remember, right? Because ultimately we are all, you know, pure devotees ultimately. However, we've forgotten. That's a big part. So a Kanishta have forgotten, really forgotten. A Madhyam is remembering, and a Uttama is fully. So we get to check where we are. Where are we?
Hare Krishna.
Yes, thank you.
Your time. So
I can't wait to see you. I can't wait to see you. I mean, Ishvara is so like, I used to call him my son. Now I call him my Baba. Ishvara.
It's always nice. Just following your line of thought, I was saying that normally Uttama devotee considers himself, he doesn't consider himself a devotee, he considers everyone as devotee except himself. So the devotee will never accept anybody's offending him because he's always considered himself to be the most fallen. So because such devotees are very, very rare. So it's only when we are neophyte we consider this person is offending me, that person is offending me. The devotee, they never consider anybody. However, If we commit offense to pure devotees, Krishna will take it upon us.
Mm.
Krishna will come after us.
Yeah.
One has to be very, very careful. You know, especially by Vaishnava Param. You can
Thank
commit
you so much.
sin is forgivable, but offenses is never forgivable. Very difficult.
Yeah. And it's important to not think of ourselves as Uttama when we might be Kanishta.
Exactly.
Prabhu Ishvara,
Yeah.
you said sins is forgivable, offenses is never forgivable. That's what you said. If a devotee can't forgive offense, what makes him a devotee?
First of all, the pure devotees, they don't consider you offending them. So it's difficult to actually offend the pure devotees because they never in that situation where anybody can offend them because their life is so sublime. That's difficult to offend them. It's a dira jana priya very, very dear to everyone. To those who are rough or those who are saintly. So
So any devotee who take offense is not a pure devotee.
no, a real devotee will never take offense.
Now I know how to weigh devotees. Anybody who offend
Anyway,
him
one is
is
that
not
we
a,
can
it's not a pure
classify.
devotee.
We have Kanista, Madhyam, and of course Uttama. Kanista we calculate who's offending, who's not offending. But automatically devotee will never. But only Krishna will take, if you offend a Uttama Vaishnava, then it's difficult to be forgiven. Even the feet of the dust of the feet of the pure devotee will not forgive you. That's it. That's the whole thing. So that's why we should render service to the pure devotees. It's very, very, very most important to render service and to constantly be praying to them, praying to the pure devotees. Render service, be prayer, then chance of forgiveness is there. Otherwise, our advancement will always remain stagnant. Our advancement will remain stagnant. You see the body there like on the same platform, always be full of loss, full of greed, anger all the time. All this because of offenses, basically. That we don't realize that we are committing offenses. It's like, why am I always angry all the time? Why am I always full of lust all the time?
One of the qualities, thanks Ishwara Prabhu, one of the qualities of a pure devotee is that they're not influenced by the modes of material nature.
No.
And they're free from the illusion of self-identification within this material world. And so also it's very dangerous, if we are like, if we think, oh, this person is accepting offense, they're not a pure devotee, so I don't have to accept them. That's just as dangerous.
It's not a pure devotee.
They're not a pure devotee. They're taking offense. That's just as dangerous to have that mentality.
We don't have eye to see, that's the thing. But we think we have eye to see, but we don't have eye to see.
Yeah.
Well, Hare Krishna. I would like to say this, that, sorry, Ishwara Prabhu, go ahead, please.
It's better to actually be offering obeisance to devotees, or it doesn't matter what class within the eye. Always be respectful to devotee, offering obeisances to them, rendering service to them all the time. It's always the best thing.
Yeah.
Well, Hare Krishna. I thank you all. I just wanted to say this, that you see, in this material world, if we listen to all sorts of songs that we have in this world, about 95% of them all talk about love. Yet that is what we lack in this material world. In African tradition, respect for authorities is very, very prominent. So generally, Africans respect the authorities. And because of this respect, sometimes those in position of authority abuse that respect. Now, we're talking about offense. And I looked up the definition of offense. One says that to cause to feel upset, annoyed, or resentful. Another definition, be displeasing to. Another definition, commit an illegal act. And then again, break a commonly accepted rule or principle. So, oftentimes, this is a very important subject matter, because oftentimes somebody gets upset, or somebody gets annoyed, or somebody gets resentful simply because of what somebody said or somebody did. And he says, you've offended me. And it's right, because that is the definition. Someone says, you displeased me. That is an offense. Somebody breaks a commonly accepted rule or principle. This is where I believe it's actually an offense in a devotional circus. There is principle to approaching every situation in devotional service. If one fails to apply those rules and principles, then yes, I believe that that person has committed an offense. But simply speaking the truth, presenting the truth, and upsetting somebody because you're presenting the truth and the person says, you've offended me. Yes, you've offended him, but what can be done? If you're preaching, you're obviously going to offend people. If you tell people that, why do you make your bodies a mobile cemetery? Why? Because you're consuming flesh. You put in dead carcasses, bodies in your body. So your body is a mobile cemetery. You are offending that particular person who eats meat. But it's preaching. What can you do? Srila Prabhupada also, we can say, oh, he offended so many people in his preaching. But I do not think that Krishna considers those as offense. Compared to breaking the principle that if somebody is senior to you in devotional service and he does something or says something that is improper, there is a proper way of addressing it. If somebody does not follow that, then it's an offense. But some people are saying it that simply making me upset is an offense. Therefore, everybody is silent and quiet. Even when it sees something crazy going on, they become silent. This is the danger we are all facing in this movement. So I don't know if you have something to say in this regard, because everybody is cautious of offenses. No sane person would like to commit offense. But at the same time, if something improper is taking place and you become afraid that by addressing it in the most appropriate way, somebody's still going to get offended and therefore I better keep quiet, then where do we go? Hare Krishna.
So, Ishwara Prabhu, I just wanted to share, and then please jump in again, going back to scriptures. We're told how to speak. You know, Krishna tells Arjuna in the 17th chapter, I believe, that one should speak palatable truths. There's a way that we speak. You know, he gives us instructions on how to speak. So it's not that we don't speak. I think that's Bhagavad Gita 17:14. You want to pull that up?
That's on the 17th chapter.
It's 17th chapter, I think. Yeah. I think it's
The
that verse.
The three
It's
types
also
of
said that It's also said palatable or unpalatable. Truth should be spoken. We should not just lean to one side. We can't help way if you say this way, but truths should be the last leg of Dharma. Haribol, sorry. I'm sorry to interrupt.
So can we pull up that verse just so we can hear what Krishna says? That way we can eliminate any speculations about how to speak, when to speak. Because you see, we all have our perceptions in this human form, and we all defend our perceptions. And therefore, that's why it's important to hear from Sastra, hear what Krishna says.
17 what?
I think 14. I think it's 14, either 14 or 15, if I remember correctly. And also, you know, I think Bhagavatam explains how we approach different devotees. There are different ways to approach devotees, whether they are peers or, so it's not based on just our speculations.
All right, I found it.
Okay.
Let me share it here. It's 7:15.
Oh, 15. All right. I know that verse is somewhere around there.
Okay, so 7:15 says,
There's austerity of speech. So we're like Brahma. We're all trying to perform austerity. Austerity of speech consists in speaking words that are truthful, pleasing, beneficial, and not agitating to others, and also in regularly reciting Vedic literature. So there's a way. One should not speak in such a way as to agitate the minds of others. There's a way that we speak. Harsh speaking will always agitate someone's mind. One has to be an absolute pure devotee to not accept harsh speaking. And harsh speaking comes in many forms, in tone, in body language, and the language we use. You know, like some languages just sounds harsh, right? Just to hear it sounds harsh. So it's really important that we kind of maybe, you know, just understand in our hearts when we speak, how do I want to connect? Am I speaking because I really want to connect with this person? Or am I speaking because I want to prove a point that's coming from my perception? That's important. And then again, Bhagavatam explains how we approach. We talk to peers. I remember once, I think it was, I'm thinking who that was. I remember approaching one of my spiritual masters, God brothers, approached me. And I think at that time, I was a little bit annoyed at some of the ways that my spiritual master was being treated. And that person, that very senior devotee, approached me and said, you know, this is between God brothers. God brothers speak to each other in certain ways. This is not about you speaking. And I remember at the time thinking, hey, that's my spiritual master, like, you know. And then over the years, I've you know, evaluated that statement, and I've come to understand, yeah, there's certain ways that we may have our perception and we want to prove that perception, but there is a etiquette and how to do that. And that etiquette is important. At the time, I was overstepping that etiquette. Okay, Sati Devi. Oh, Ishwara, did you want to say something? Please, just before we go to Sati. I see you're still here. Okay, maybe he's gone. Sati?
I just wanted to add that I think it was in this class, I forget who was teaching, a little bit ago that I asked a question about that, because recently when I was back at Prabhupada Village, I had an issue with a senior and I corrected them. And then I feel like I got reaction for it because I was disturbed by something they said. And then he was saying that the one who was teaching the class was saying that the person doesn't have faith in you. They cannot take correction for you. They cannot take what you said seriously. Or they cannot even take an apology from you seriously. He was quoting St. Francis of Assisi saying that we should preach, and sometimes we should, and if necessary, we should use words. He was saying that we have to do the work to show that we are, we have to do the work. And that way they will see us as a serious devotee or see that they can, take correction for us. So I was just wanting to add that in because that's kind of what he, again, and it made sense to me, that this person didn't have faith in me or see me as somebody they would even want to take correction from, or that they want to see serious. So it made sense to me what he said.
Thank you for sharing that, Sati. Thank you so much. Yeah, this is a theme, like Sahadev said, we don't talk about so much, and it's important because we all have our perspectives. We've all been, we all have pain from how we talk to each other, or how we think about each other, how we respond to each other. All of us have pain about that, from the highest down to the lowest. Rupanuga Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Namaste, Pranam. I am very honored to be part of this family and part of this Sangha. The thing is that, as you pointed out, Matan, the thing is that exactly the question about the etiquette is exactly the structures that is set up around the Sadacharya approach in terms of the way to raise whatever we have as an understanding that we might find disturbing. And yes, it is about etiquette. But the other thing is also that we have a structure within ISKCON that is taught, the Sadacharya course, which is taught exactly to raise, if any devotee have a situation and check if it's Sastra Sadhu and Guru, if that is in line, and then can go through the process of reporting to his immediate senior devotee, who would then raise it with the other devotee, and they raise it till it get to that stage, etc. But what I'm saying, there are those structures in place for communication, to share, and a forum for us to actually approach it, which is basically ISKCON diplomacy, but it's also part of the devotee diplomacy and the structures that's set up for us to communicate. That's basically, I just wanted to say it's exactly that example that you said about when the God brothers were speaking and what you felt, etc. It is a blessing of the experience. You had a response, but the point is that there are structures in ISKCON itself, although it's not functioning effectively yet. The point is there; it is being presented as courses. Hare Krishna.
Yes, thank you so much. Yes, Rupanuga Prabhu. That's a fact. Prabhupada has given us everything to understand in his books. And yeah, we depending on where we are in our spiritual evolving, we may accept some things and reject some things and understand some things and not understand. At the end of the day, it is all about how we're desiring to improve or to be better devotees at the end of the day. And I want to close here with just this from the preface, Understanding Srimad Bhagavatam, and just what we're talking about today, the prayers of Lord Brahma. So this statement says, these prayers established a strong relationship between devotee and Krishna, and in that way to develop detachment and knowledge. All these prayers of devotees like Bhishma, Prahlad, Nard, Dhruva, Kuntadevi were all fearless and active in their duties. Their prayers need commentary and explanation to relish their beauty and devotion. This will also enhance our understanding of this ripened fruit of Vedic knowledge. So this prayers of Lord Brahma is simply to help us to understand the scriptures and to understand ultimately in this case, Garbhadaksha Vishnu, whoever of us thinks about, Garbhadaksha Vishnu, not that we don't, but just in general, mostly we're thinking about, Krishna playing the flute and being with the gopis, and this is normally how we think. But here's Brahma, just bring our awareness to Garbhadaksha Vishnu and his role. And he's doing it in prayer. So let's all pray, because like Rupanuga said, yeah, some things we just are not following. But we can pray to follow them. We can pray.
Well, Hare Krishna, thank you so much, Mother. I have one verse to most likely end on, because we talked about Bhagavad Gita 17, 5, right? Let's see, in same Bhagavad Gita, chapter 10, verses 4 to 5. 10 is the absolute nature of the Lord. So in the purport, it talks about the different qualities. And here, Satyam, truthfulness. Satyam, truthfulness, means that facts should be presented as they are for the benefit of others. Facts should not be misrepresented. According to social conventions, it is said that one can speak the truth only when it is palatable to others. But that is not truthfulness. The truth should be spoken in a straightforward way so that others will understand actually what the facts are. If a man is a thief and if people are warned that he is a thief, that is truth. Although sometimes the truth is unpalatable, one should not refrain from speaking it. Truthfulness demands that the facts be presented as they are for the benefit of others. That is the definition of truth. So this is what I try to go by, and I always pray to Guru and Krishna that when I do attempt to present the truth, I do it in a respectful manner, even though I may be speaking the truth. But I will not shy away from expressing or speaking the truth. If that means, if someone feels offended by me speaking the truth and have to go to hell, I will not be the first to go to hell. Okay.
No, Haribol Sahadev, just because that's an important point that you brought, and it does need to be addressed in context with how Krishna is speaking that what Prabhupada, how Prabhupada is referencing that. And of course, we know he's referencing it in terms of the material world, in terms of a material consciousness, of speaking to people that are in material consciousness, right? That's how devotees are always going to tell the truth in reference to how we present things for people that are in material consciousness that do not understand. We do speak the truth. And what may not be palatable is for someone to hear, like, don't eat meat, but they may be attached to eating meat. That does not, though, in that context of how Krishna is speaking that verse to Arjuna, it's really important. And I say this with all sincerity and love for everyone on this forum. It does not mean that we don't take into consideration, as you said, Sahab, that when we speak the truth, actually Bhattacharya Maharaj references this in his book, Radha Sunya. If you, any devotees, please read that book, Radha Sunya. It's all about getting Radharani's mercy. And His Holiness Bhattacharya Maharaj references this. He said, if we have to speak truth to, let's say, somebody that's superior to us, or superior in the sense that there's some authority, that we speak it in the most loving and kind and supportive way. I mean, he uses all these adjectives to describe how to do that. So it's not that we don't speak the truth. We always want to speak the truth because that's being authentic. However, we don't want to speak the truth in such a way that we push someone away. We want to speak the truth in a way that we can bring someone closer as much as we possibly can, if that's possible. I mean, obviously, some people will always take offense. And what maybe there isn't anything we can, well, there is always something we can do, according to Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj. He said, if somebody takes offense, then it's upon us. If the onus is on us to go to those persons, ask forgiveness, and ask, what can I do? Doesn't mean that we don't speak the truth. It just means that I'm sorry this offended you. That was not my intention. I simply wanted to speak my truth, whatever the truth was. And please, is there anything that I can do to serve you? That's a way for us to get out of that offense. And Varaha is here, so that means we didn't end yet. We cannot end without hearing from Varaha Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Mataji, please accept humble obeisances. Forgive me for being absent. Maybe you know this devotee, His Holiness Paribrakacharya from London. He called me during the film class and he's been talking since then. He was the one who kept me off the class. I'm sorry. You must be knowing him. So, sorry, I wasn't part of all the discussion, but this last statement, Mataji, I want to say something that will probably help me. You know, I'm sorry, our body is not African or black or whatever, but history is also part of the truth. And from history, we have seen how religion has been used to colonize, to enslave, and to abuse people. And in Africa, many people are fighting against this in many ways. And some of us, our generation grew up during the apartheid in South Africa, and we were part of the movement that were fighting for the liberation of Africa. So, excuse me, I'm saying this just to let you know that sometimes it is very difficult for us to practice this kind of humility, where you have to go and say sorry to somebody who is abusing you, where you have to go and say forgive me to somebody who's just finished abusing you. So, I mean, it's like accepting madness with religion. So it is going to be very difficult to make some of us to adopt that kind of humility. Not because we don't want to, but because history is very fresh in our memory. And we are part of those generations who fought against this. So we cannot, because of Krishna consciousness, now change that mood. So you might find this in some of us, like from Sahadev Prabhu, like you knew me already. But this is at the back of our mind. And that's why it's difficult for us not to say the truth how it's supposed to be spoken, and not to be diplomatic about it at all. Because that will mean that we're again allowing some kind of slavery, mental slavery taking place. So I hope you get my mood, my sentiment.
I absolutely.
I should say this.
Absolutely. Yeah. I get that. And that's a part of Kali Yuga, as you know, and that's a part of what's going on and still going on and always being resurrected in America as we speak right now. So yes, that mood, that mentality, that of how people tend to, be in that mindset of just manipulating others. That's always there. I absolutely understand that. That I understand also to be a part of our human reality, let's say, which we know is not real. I mean, but it is real, right? Simultaneously one and different. It's a human reality, though. And I can only say, Prabhu, I'm not speaking for myself because I understand exactly what you're saying, given that, I still have very much a human mind and intelligence. However, I can say, though, having, as many of you, served our beloved, revered spiritual master, I have personally experienced with him where I know where someone was calling my spiritual master a demon. And I was so disturbed. And I asked my spiritual master, what is the best way for me to deal with this? He was leaving his body. And I was like, how will I deal with this? How will I, I'm sorry to say, but this person was also a spiritual master that was saying that. And my spiritual master taught me before he left, he said, I want you to not respond in a way that is like a material way of being annoyed and angry and disturbed with this person. I want you to, as best as you can, assist this person's disciples if you can. And if you should meet this person, which I did do, then I want you to be respectful. Because as he explained to me, in this case, it may be a little different from what you're speaking, but I think it's kind of a little bit, the principle is the same. He said, because everybody has their understanding of how they're serving Srila Prabhupada. And my way of serving might be different from how somebody else's way might be. And so we need to take that into consideration. Like he says, walk in the shoe of the other person. So yes, I am understanding absolutely that it's not easy to walk out of the human paradigm for what we have all experienced in terms of just different kinds of manipulations of them, as Gurudev used to say, manipulations and permutations of how people do things in this world that are totally, absolutely not in support of empowering, since that word has been used here. So yes, that's there. At the same time, though, we also have been given the mercy, the grace, the benediction to be able to participate in the spiritual paradigm. And that we are responsible for, as well as, moving through all the material mess that's here. So both things are there, both. And so I absolutely understand you, Varaha Prabhu, and you being one of the leaders within our society, that responsibility is there to bring awareness of the sufferings, the misery of people acting on the bodily platform, and at the same time, raising people to another level of awareness. That's our mission. That was Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj.
Well, Hare Krishna. We thought we were going to end, but we have Rupanuga Prabhu sent up. Mother, if you may take this, I believe and I hope. The word is, please, let this be the last interaction. Rupanuga Prabhu, please you may unmute.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna. Yeah, now the other day, I just want to share. Now the other day we had, I think it was Mansachi giving on a Zoom. And one of the things that she explained is quite relevant to, how we see and how we experience things from a relative space. The question around in today's times, we sit here where they talk about relative reality, the metaverse, even lower or more involved, more entangled, and then the metaphysical. The question, the point that was quite pertinent to me is that we are, once we have the mercy of being accepted in the house that Srila Prabhupada built, and accept the four regulative and follow the four regulative principles, chant minimum of 16 rounds, then we're already on the transcendental platform. All these other things that I am struggling with in terms of where I come from and the chains and the shackles that I have around my mind and those type of challenges. There is some devotee that presents something called Jeep Juggle, and then he was saying, oh, these things would come out, but you must just keep on keeping on. The mind would play these things, you must just keep on keeping on. This is the point. The point is that we are engaged in the transcendental process. The point is, and we must support one another in transcendental process. It is not minimizing what I have in my psychological challenges, so to speak. But the thing is that at least I must be helped by the Sangha or the devotees around me. That's all that I want to say, just as a comment. But in any case, Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much, Rupananda Prabhu. And we thank you all devotees. Mother, we thank you so much for spending this length of time with us. And
please invite me back, Sahadev.
Of course, we will. We're always grateful to have your association, and because almost every single time you are here, you make the association very interactive. So, and that motherly nature of yourself makes it even much more sweeter. So, devotees, we're going to humbly request you all to kindly unmute yourselves, and we all chant Hare Krishna Maha Mantra to express our deepest appreciation to our one and only Grace VRAJALILA Devi. Jai. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Hare. Bancha kalpatarivascha, Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki Jai.